Okay, hello. So obviously we've had the very, very disappointing news that Lucy Connolly will not be going free today. So the judgment is back. She remains in prison. They have upheld the original sentence, and I just thought it'd be worth taking you through some of the reasoning that's in that judgment, and some of it that is, well, really, to my mind, shows and confirms what many have been saying about it, which is that yes, it is being done to essentially punish her for her views. And that's a very strong claim, but it is, I think, borne out by some of what's been said in the remarks. But I'll take you through a few bits of reasoning first. So first, I mean, we have, you can see here, I've got my other monitor here that I'm looking at, since I'm not looking at the camera. But so if you've watched the previous video before the case, you know that the key question here is whether or not um, she was uh, potentially misadvised by her solicitor, or or sort of whether he had made it sufficiently clear to her that um, what she was actually pleading guilty to. Lucy maintained not, and that she didn't realise that she was pleading guilty to intending to incite serious violence, and the solicitor uh, made the claim that so, um, and and basically, so as we see here, the court very much sort of as expected, but sided with him. So we have he struck us as a conscientious defense lawyer with a clear grasp of the relevant law, practice, and procedure, and a realistic appraisal of the issues in the case. So very much coming down on his side. Um, there were what Adam, the Lucy's appeal barrister, was trying to make the case that he hadn't been very clear about certain of his advices to her, but that's been um, pretty much entirely rejected by the court. And meanwhile, when it comes to Lucy, they say we found the evidence that about these important matters incredible, which is to say, not credible. And in particular, which seems rather strange to me, to be honest, but they are saying that what do they say? You know, her evidence to the court is articulate and things like this. So she, which goes to that point of she probably did understand what she was being told by the solicitor. Um, and so then they say down here, we are quite unable to accept that she signed the endorsement, which is to say, uh, or basically accepting that she had intended to incite serious violence, and without understanding any of its references to the culpability factor in the starting point. Um, and well, it certainly didn't look like that from her performance in court. She said repeatedly she never intended to incite serious violence. And she said she hadn't realised that's what it meant. And there was the issue that the barrister had said was, sorry, the solicitor had tried to argue it down to something quite technical, which was that she intended to cite it in that moment, but she didn't intend it what later happened. But that didn't really matter, to be honest, and that was basically a technicality. But Lucy believed that this meant that she hadn't really intended the violence that followed, and therefore that it wasn't that serious. Anyway, so on as sort of expected, on this first ground of what the solicitor advised her, and whether she ought to have pleaded guilty, and all this kind of thing, it was not accepted. Um, but that was not that surprising, to be honest, because we didn't really expect the court to say, you've done a terrible job, Mr. Solicitor, etc. Um, but I think what's more interesting, more really concerning, is another bit. Now let me just scroll up. So the second ground was partly dependent on the first ground, but was that basically the judge had been too harsh anyway in his sentencing. But this is quite difficult to achieve because it would the court of appeal would have to rule that the sentence had been not just excessive, but manifestly. And I think there's another word is uh, what is it? It's somewhere anyway. Um, Can't find it now. Hold on. The word is um, yeah. So manifestly excessive is what they would have to prove, and so that they said it wasn't manifestly excessive, and one of the factors that was quite interesting there is, so let's find it. Um, right, so it's about the mitigating factors. And whether the judge gave significant, insufficient weight to them or not. So we here 64. So we do not accept that the judge gave insufficient weight to the mitigating factors, which he rightly identified. Mr. King argued that, with the exception of the offending tweets, and the tweets relied on in mitigation, which is to say her um, saying stop rioting, the other social media messages to which the court was referred could not add to the case against the applicant and should therefore be treated as irrelevant. Um, we disagree. The significance of those other communications, in our view, is that they provide important context when considering the weight to be given to the mitigation. In particular, the submissions as to remorse and to the applicant speaking against violence and hatred. So you ask, what were those other tweets? So they're listed above. Um, and let's have a look at them, shall we? So basically, these tweets saying, um, speaking against her, the evidence for mitigation in her saying, "Please stop rioting," um, and that it wasn't very convincing when she was doing this. Apparently, against that she was, being against so-called violence and hatred here. So let's have a look at the tweets, shall we? So where is it? So, um, here are the two tweets. So on the 24th, 5th of July, so before the Southport murders, she responded to a video shared online by Tommy Robinson showing a black male being tackled to the ground for allegedly masturbating in public. To which she replied, Somalian, I guess. Loads of them. That message was followed by a vomiting emoji. So, well, a anyway, it's a tweet showing her opinion on the amount of Somalians in the country, more or less. It's reacting to something she's seen online, which obviously is not something you want to see. Uh, you know, anyone masturbating in public, but not least someone who may have been a recent migrant. And well, I mean, you can make up your own minds about it, but it doesn't seem to me to be that um, extraordinary. That's strong. That this demonstrates some unbelievably terrible mindset. Similarly, if you saw that on the street, you would absolutely be disgusted. You would think, "What the hell is going on here?" And all she's doing is, connecting that with other, um, political trends she may have seen, and thinking, "This is something I don't like." Um, Here, then, we have the second tweet, which so I'll go through it. So, uh, 3rd of August, and the applicant posted the following message in response to an anti-racism protest in Manchester. You note that that's not in quotes or anything. That's simply how the judge puts it. It's very favourable language towards this protest, which is just assumed to be a good thing here. And how could you possibly criticise an anti-racism protest? Is seems to me to be implied a bit here. So, oh, good. I take it they will all be in line to sign up to house an illegal boat invader then. Oh, sorry, refugee. Maybe sign a waiver to say they don't mind if it's one of their family that gets attacked, butchered, raped, etc. by unvetted criminals. Not all heroes wear capes, so an ironic comment at the end there. So, um, I mean, and let's be clear, the judge, the original sentencing judge, referred to these tweets as, quote, further racist remarks. So, I mean, the first one does refer to Somalians, um, but the second one doesn't even refer to any specific group. It does, speak negatively about boat invaders, which is a sentiment shared by the vast majority of the public. By the way, it is absolutely true that they're, that illegal migrants from who've come over in boats have committed terrible crimes. There's significant evidence for places like Telegraph and elsewhere and freedom of information requests that have to be kind of dragged out of the Home Office, but still about the over-representation of foreign criminals in sex crimes in particular. Of course, there's the grooming gangs as well. That's a slightly different issue, but there's a general sense that there's a real concern over this. And yes, you've got strong language there, attacked, butchered, raped, etc. Um, but you know, I find it absolutely extraordinary that this tweet, which is basically criticizing those who cheer for open borders, is being taken as something that's taken into account at all. Frankly, it's a political opinion, this tweet, um, but that it's being taken as evidence of basically her, you know, her poor moral character, and that is therefore speaking to whether or not it was mitigating when she said, let's stop rioting, essentially, don't do this. And it's the assumption that they seem to be making to go back to the bottom um, is that if you have you know, if you're concerned about illegal migration, if you criticize lefty groups which advocate for it, and if you respond to Tommy Robinson tweets detailing, crimes by non-white people in a public place negatively, then this, essentially. Speaks to your character as someone who isn't really against violence and hatred, despite the fact that all of um, you know the, the very reasonable and sympathetic characteristics of Lucy Connolly, being her work as a childminder, and then all of the difficulties she's faced in the past. So this, to my mind, is one of the most extraordinary part of this judgment, and yeah, what I'll finally add is that we saw um, in the uh, in the summing up by the state prosecutor, he so not only had he interrogated her about her supposedly racist views and her what she thought about immigration, whether it made people unsafe. That was in the cross-examination. But in his summing up, he used the phrase, "These other tweets were evidence of her racist mindset." And you know, well, I mean, is this thought crime? What's going on here? Is this firstly, are you not allowed to have a racist mindset? So-called, you're not allowed to have these thoughts, these illegal thoughts now. But that this was, what the Crown really felt was, adding to her culpability and needed to be particularly punished, um, which has come through here, I think, and that's a key reason why this judgment is just it's just ridiculous. But yes, I mean that's some of the legal analysis done. But I mean, 31 months for this tweet is the basic reality here. It's just absolutely extraordinary. I'm angry. I dare say anyone who's heard about this case will be angry. You can compare it to other crimes which have received less time in prison for far more serious crimes. But they've just basically said, computer says no. We can't. We can't. Who? Well, the point Alison Pearson made is, who is she a threat to? Why does she need to stay behind bars when, in fact, this week the Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood is mulling, releasing an enormous amount of prisoners on tag um, to free up space, and yet Lucy Connolly has to stay behind bars. I mean, it's just a joke. So anyway, those are some thoughts. Yeah, let me know what you think. And yeah, all right, signing off.